Enterprise Service Management, or ESM. It's using those IT principles, processes, and technology and standardizing that while extending it across the business to areas like HR, marketing, and facilities. So when you extend those technologies and you standardize those technologies, one of the common tools that's used is Jira Service Desk. As a matter of fact, in the cloud version, there are templates of Service Desk that are used for business units outside of IT. VisualScript for Jira has a list of reports that are used in IT service management that are built around areas like how are we performing against our service level agreements. These reports can also extend to those other business units. HR should have defined service level agreements that help them measure how well they are performing as it relates to their agreements with their customers. So I'm going to show 4 reports today, and really what the focus of them is to tell a story on how it is that we're performing as it relates to those SLAs. The first one is our health gauge report, and the idea of the health gauge report is to show us how we are performing against all SLAs and how we are performing against each SLA. Couple of data inputs for parameters here, just the project key, start date, end date, issue type. Do we want to include breaches from the ongoing cycle? We'll leave the sample size as 0 to show everything. Run this report. The second one is going to give us more detailed metrics around those SLAs. So this is the KPI report. So project key, start date, end date, we'll keep the same. Issue type, and we'll keep the breaches from the ongoing cycle as true. And we'll let these reports run. And on the left, you'll see our gauge. And it's showing us that 23% of our tickets overall have breached SLA. So our health in our service desk is getting close to yellow. But now this is showing us overall, but which one is giving us a problem? You can click the expanded view and you could see that, well, time to resolution is at 23%. That's still in the green. I think we're okay here for a little bit. The time to response is at 36%, well in the yellow. This is clearly the problem that we want to address first, and then we can get into time to resolution. So we take a look here at our detailed SLA report, and this shows us just a lot more detailed metrics in the number of tickets and percentage resolved with hyperlinks, how many tickets were resolved within certain time frames in terms of when SLAs would be breached. You get a breakout by your teammates to see the metrics as it relates to each one of our teammates and how well they are able to work against those SLAs. So high level view with a gauge from green to red with a needle, more detailed view, more detailed KPIs. The next report is our time and status report. Now this is going to help us identify bottlenecks. So each of our SLAs, they're met or breached via a trigger, right? So there's a transition from one status to another that triggers that SLA to being met or if it's over time to have been breached. The flow chart here, our time and status report, is going to help us identify those bottlenecks. What status did our tickets take the longest in before they transition out of? That might help us identify where we're residing in for the longest period of time that's causing these SLA breaches to be so high. So project key, start date, end date, issue type, we'll leave the sample size to show everything. But also, we know our time to first response is high. Understand, and even our time to resolve is getting there, right? So having an understanding day over day, which days are the problems that are causing our spikes in those responses and resolutions is important too. So our mean time to respond and resolve line chart, project key, start date, end date, issue type, and I'll let those line charts run and I'll show you the flow chart. So in the flow chart, we're going to take a look for those statuses that are triggering these SLAs. And we'll see, waiting for customer has been average time and status for 9 days, 1 hour and 47 minutes. Now that's really high, obviously, but that could be the status that's causing those breaches to be so high. Gives you a nice view of the bottleneck, as well as the areas where your team is performing really well, right? We're able to, for example, get out of pending. We don't stay in pending very long, so we're able to get out of that status rather quickly. So areas where you can use a little work and areas where you're doing really well. Over here, we'll see on our line charts, we're going to really look for those spikes. And those spikes aren't necessarily saying it's a bad thing. They're just saying it's taking longer to respond, longer to resolve. Again, not necessarily a bad thing. Those tickets might have been much more difficult. They might have required a lot of escalation, They might have required change in process, whatever the case may be, was causing that spike. It also might be a training issue. It also might be a process issue. It also might be that someone was just on vacation that day. So you can take a look at the expanded views, and you can actually see more detailed metrics as to the average time in hours day by day with hyperlinks to those issues. So you see how these reports are telling a full story. We're starting with the gauges, and we're identifying where our needle resides for all of our SLAs and each of them. We're looking at the KPI report, and we're really digging deep into those metrics to figure out just more detail as to why that SLA has become a problem. We're looking at the flow chart to validate that we have bottlenecks in those statuses that are triggering those SLAs. And then we look at the day-to-day performance of those SLAs, so we can really identify those days where there are problems, and then we can dig in and really better understand why those days were problems. So that concludes the demonstration of our health gauge report, our SLA report, our time and status report, and our mean time to respond and resolve reports in VisualScript for Jira that were built around those IT service management principles, but extend really well across business units as you start standardizing into enterprise service management. Thank you.